Hey guys, what's going on? Bofeity here. I just wanted to take a minute to do a little patch preview slash map preview video for 1.4 as it is getting closer to release. We had the chance to play a little on the closed test branch or CTB over this past Memorial weekend. So I firsthand got to try out both new maps, Da Nang Airbase and Kason. Both of these locations have been highly requested over the past few years, and with both carrying a great significance historically speaking with the US involvement in Vietnam, it is a most welcome addition to finally have these two maps coming with patch 1.4. Now I'll be the first to tell you I've previously been critical of Tripwire and Antimatter Games for rehashing and porting over old hat maps from RO2 and RS1, but they finally showed their hands here with these two gems that have a ton of new assets scattered throughout. Of course, I cannot judge the maps with regards to balance as the playtest was done with half of a full server, but what I can say is that they are both incredibly large for purely infantry-based territory maps. One tester did mention that both maps have very large roads as if they were made with the intention of having M113 APCs roaming around in the near future. I cannot disagree with that. Both maps have an atmosphere uniquely their own, so there's no doubt they'll stand out from the rest of the pack. Kason takes us along the DMZ to the border of Laos and the US Marine garrison station there. PAVN are on the attack with the US Marine Corps defending. Now this isn't just some rehashed version of the skirmish Firebase map either. The signature red dirt is cut up with trenches and sandbag walls and bunkers rise from the ground. There are 5 objectives here in a 1-2-1-1 format. The map overall is very flat and my first impressions were, this is ASAO on steroids, man. Alpha is similar to Dong Ha's Alpha and Bravo objectives if you combine them, though on Kason, Alpha has a good amount of room in front of the cap to be battled for as PAVN push in before getting to the cap zone itself. The actual cap zone is relatively tiny, and of course anytime there is a good amount of open terrain, you can bet you'll be needing a lot of smokes to push successfully. Now there are trenches and craters that will help the attackers seek cover where needed, but smokes will always be king. The issue arises that there are only 2 scouts and 2 radio men on the map, so there may be a need for an increased number of smoke carriers in the future. Of course, it should be noted that there is a resupply for attackers before you reach A, so utilizing that may overcome the low number of smoke carriers. From there, Bravo and Charlie objectives must both be held simultaneously before proceeding any further. Both objectives are relatively small and are separated by about 180 meters by a large centralized cluster of barracks. Like every objective on these 2 new maps, there seems to be ample room to flank around and encircle the points for attackers. It also should be noted that there is a resupply for each objective for attackers to reload their smokes. Proceeding to Delta, we see the downed C-130 near the runway that encompasses the cap zone. The objective is only protected by a perimeter wall of sandbags with scattered bunkers. The cap is otherwise fully exposed with all flanks open to attackers. Fairly open once inside, only a few buildings, barrels, and crates are around for cover. It should be noted that you can, in fact, go inside both halves of the downed C-130. The map concludes with the Echo objective, which is defined by huge flanks on either side, as there is a runway that divides Delta and Echo. The objective itself has a very small cap zone, similar to that of the final cap of ASAO. This one, like ASAO, is also a little sandbag city. There's a great deal of flat open ground ahead of the attackers from Delta, as you'll have to attack across the runway. To me, this was reminiscent of the last cap of Guadalcanal, but on a much grander scale. There's only one watchtower overlooking all that open ground, so you won't really have to worry about vertical sniping. However, with the wide flanks, it will surely allow some deadly crossfire, as PAVN have to cross that open ground of the runway. Did I mention the importance of smokes? There are 2 resupplies south of the runway, in case more smokes are needed. Just from looking at the tickets, 430 versus 430 and 35 minutes both seem probably too low for such a large map, but again, these things are to be determined. The Da Nang Airbase was a major staging point for the American air power to quickly respond to threats coming from north of the DMZ, with flights from both the United States Air Force and Marine Corps. The base suffered many attacks from both the NLF and PAVN forces over the years. This one is bright, and the saturation slider is all the way up on this one, boys. Da Nang is definitely one huge ass map, so it makes sense if they do end up adding those M113s to it. Good ambient sounds here. I always love to hear ambient sounds, explosions, and guns shooting in the distance. Real Vietnam hours here, boys. 4 scouts and 2 radio men, so there's definitely more smokes available to attackers here on Da Nang than there are on Kason. Objective Alpha is slightly uphill from the attacker's spawn in the rice fields. There are 130 meters of flanks around each side of Alpha, with a double barbed wire perimeter, though Charlie has created a lot of gaps to penetrate. The hallmark of Objective Alpha is the Wolfenstein enemy territory style bunker with glory holes peeking out every which way. And if you're so inclined, yes, you can get on top of that bunker. After Alpha, there is a gap of marshland before getting to the mortar pits of Bravo. A small objective with an even smaller cap zone. Sandbag City Jr. here with a lot of open ground in front of it. There's plenty of debris and some minor elevation changes for attackers to hide behind and place their tunnels behind. Continuing with the theme of the new maps with the north on the offensive, Bravo seems to be attackable from all sides. And I will note here that there is one M2 machine gun on the left side of Bravo that becomes active after Alpha is capped, though this was the only static MG I found on either map. From there, there's one main road that travels the distance of the map and divides the pairings of the objectives that we will see next. Charleen Delta are both enclosed positions surrounded by walls and fences. There are gaps to be found by attackers to allow access inside. There are 3 separate storm drains or sewers that are accessible between the 2 objectives to allow another point of entry. Charlie is exposed 360 degrees around. In fact, attackers can go up to 40 meters behind the objective itself. Delta, however, being slightly more north than Charlie, does not allow as much room for flanking to the north, but both sides are still relatively open. Be advised that there are so many crates on Objective Delta that you may get Counter-Strike flashbacks. The objective contains 2 large storage buildings with various debris scattered outside and inside. Both Charlie and Delta must both be held to proceed further. From there, you'll only have a short distance to Echo and Foxtrot to the north. Foxtrot is Tent City, so yes, there are tents, but not just tents. There are some interesting double-decker barracks in there. There's not much cover to be had here, so the flatness of the map really shows here at Foxtrot. Across that main vertical road that divides the map, you have the hangars and revetments of the Da Nang Airbase itself. Echo's revetments provide a natural barrier around the objective. The hangars provide some defensive positions to hold, but the attackers can find their way around if you're not careful. This initially reminded me of those hangars on Peleliu, but it also gave me a Cold Steel vibe from RO2 as well. Echo and Golf share a perimeter, so Golf is really just a continuation of Echo with the same terrain and all that, but a bit more vertical cap zone. As I mentioned before, there is quite a divide between the 2 sides of the map by that main road, so capping both will pose a bit of a challenge. Now, Hotel is the fuel tank's interesting objective with the giant fuel tanks around, though you cannot get on top of them if you were wondering. It's a relatively large cap zone and objective in general, so Hotel will most likely be the final battle for Da Nang Airbase. It's worth noting as well that the whole area north of the cap zone is in the combat zone if you remain inside of the walls. Otherwise, the combat zone ends just north of the cap on the dividing road. That being said, you won't die if you run out of combat on that main road, so you could in theory just run the whole length of the road, hop inside the walls, and place a tunnel way north of the cap for maximum Viet Cong sneakery. Now, 30 minutes is probably way too short for a map with 8 objectives. The tickets, however, 680 versus 500, could be fine, but then again, that is still to be determined. So that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this little patch preview / map preview for patch 1.4. If you enjoy this type of content, do me a favor, hit that sub button and ring that bell for me. Of course, if you like this video, make sure to leave a like and drop a comment below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.